Good morning and welcome to this week's tarot reading. Today we're going to be getting into some areas that for me have been kind of challenging throughout my life. So, kind of like the opening invitation is when you have something authentic to share, what guides you to know where to express yourself? Sometimes when you either are excited or you have something you want to share that's really important, we feel like we want to share it everywhere. The thing is sometimes, um, the eagerness to share the idea can get it across. It can come out confused, it can come out flustered, depending on where we're sharing it. And sometimes just the people that we're sharing it with, they may be, the wrong group to be sharing with. And that can also kind of muddle what it is. And sometimes if we share with the wrong group, because we're so eager to get people to understand, it can take some of the authenticity away as we try to maybe twist or shift it in order for them to understand when understanding is never something they were meant to have. So there's times when we feel so inspired by our thoughts that we want to share them with everyone we meet, only to find ourselves unable to find the right words or to gain traction with some people. So learning how best to express our creative ideas in ways that allows us to remain true to ourselves, it takes time and willingness to experiment and to understand that there's going to be times nothing we do is going to get us heard. When we take time to really feel into the places and relationships that naturally bring our ideas forward, we can begin to remove the tension and pressure around sharing at random. We have to remember that we all have our unique ways of seeing the world and sharing our ideas with others. There's times when we may feel that others are incapable of seeing or valuing who we are. When we can take a sense of our value back, right? Like when we stop putting our value on whether people are willing to listen or understand us and we take it back and we place our value on ourselves, then, you know, it becomes less about the places and people that we're trying to engage with and more about how does it feel when we're trying to engage with different people. We might see that our style may be out of sync with certain groups and places we're trying to engage when we take our value out of the equation. So, one of the strongest tools available to you on this journey is your body. Pausing to feel the signals will strengthen your ability to tell when you are in your right place with the right people. And learning to trust yourself may also help alleviate that pressure to push or the guilt around altering your ideas and messages just to get others to get it and to understand what it is you're trying to say. So, the purpose for today's reading is to gain a deeper understanding of what might be impacting your ability to remain consistent in sharing your unique expressions. Because if you can remain consistent, then sometimes it really makes no difference where you're sharing it, because as long as you're consistent and authentic, then you will feel your way into knowing where and when to share. The guiding questions that we're going to start to shuffle into the deck right now is what environments have the greatest impact on your ability to authentically express yourself? And we already have somebody wanting to speak because, hold on, I got to grab my jumper. Okay, so we'll put that over to the side. Interesting. We haven't had a jumper in a while. So, what environments have the greatest impact on your ability to authentically express yourself? It's pretty good. One last shuffle. But all right, now let's put our cards out. One, two, three, four, five, and we'll put our jumper up here. All right. The first question asks, what aspects of your unique expression are seeking your recognition? And that's one of the first ways that you can start to put your value in a different place when you're trying to interact and express, is understanding what it means for you, how it feels for you. And so, what aspect of your unique expressions are seeking your recognition right now? And that is the Two of Cups. So, the Two of Cups is coming in forward and saying what your expression is asking to be recognized, like what part of your expression is asking to be recognized, is your intuitive, your soul level, your heartfelt authenticity, right? It's wanting to be able to express without having to morph, without having to change, without having to transform, to be fully embodied and connected to the heart of what it is that you want to share. The Two of Cups is also saying, like, this is the beginning of an unfurling process, right? So once you can start to understand how your intuition feels, how it speaks to you, how you can get into flow with being able to express what it is that you want to say, you know, as that starts to build and gain momentum, you're going to find more that intuitive knowing of this is my place, these are my people in order to be able to share, and less of what's wrong with me that no matter what I say, it's not coming across, because both can be emotionally charged. And the thing is the Two of Cups is saying, we're looking at the heart of your expression. We're looking at what it is that you can feel into is the right time and the right place to be sharing. Next, we're going to look at what embodied signs show you your right people in places. So if we're following our intuition, many times the intuition actually speaks through the body, because intuition can be so quick to know what's going on through, energetic readings or just being aware of what's going on. The body is the fastest receptor, right? And what it does is it really can intuit through a somatic reaction what it is that's going on, so that you've probably heard people say, like, I walk into a room and I feel icky and I need to leave, or I know exactly what people I like. Growing up, I always knew, like, if I met somebody and I disliked them from the beginning, I would never be able to like them. I may be able to kind of work with them and tolerate them, but they would never become anyone that I would let my guard down for. And that's just something that we learn through experience. And when we take the time to reflect back, we can always go back to an actual physical sign or feeling that was always present during any of these situations. And so again, our body is asking us, like, what helps us to know the right people and places is the Four of Coins. And I find this is actually a really good way to tune into that somatic feeling in the body, because the Four of Coins is about, to me, it's about resource management, right? And so when you look at the squirrels spend all their time gathering food and hiding it in different places so that in the wintertime they have a storehouse of different things. The thing with squirrels, though, unlike, say, chipmunks, is squirrels will hide them everywhere. And because they hide them everywhere instead of specific pockets, it can become very difficult to find where they are. And so this I find to be a very beautiful way of looking at it, because what this is saying is when you're in your right place, your body will feel that resource, right? Like your body will feel grounded. It will feel stabilized. It'll feel that if you're sharing your resources, which is your insight, which is your skills, which is your ability, whatever this unique expression is that's trying to come out, if you're sharing it with the right people, you will be able to remember that where you've shared that with. Whereas if you go in and you're sharing it with the wrong people or it's the wrong time, then what you're going to find here is that that body's going to start to feel scattered. There's going to be less of a grounding and less of an understanding of what it is. There might be a feeling of reaching of what do I share here? How do I share it? All of that kind of stuff. So the the Four of Coins can have this almost like hoarding energy to it of I'm going to keep all of this stuff to myself. But to me, I always look at the Four of Coins as, so let's say I want to take a trip and the trip is going to cost $5,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to gather the resources. I'm going to start to make the plans. I'm going to start to look at itineraries, right? To me, that's what the healthy Four of Coins is about, is making the plans and understanding the resources that you need before you can make the big commitment to whatever it is that you want. And if your experience has been the feeling of no one ever understanding, no one ever getting what you're trying to say, then you might be on the other side of the Four of Coins, which is, the body feels really hard. It feels really rigid and structured. And, you also feel that it's unsafe to give anything away. So really tuning into, does your body feel relaxed at sharing the information that you have? Does it feel prepared? Does it feel as if it's in a place where it can breathe, or is it really tightening up and is it really holding on to what it wants? They can be very, very subtle, but what you're really looking for sometimes is even just you walk into a room and all of a sudden this happens, right? And it can be very, very subtle. Or you walk into a room and you go, that's what the body's asking you to lean into. And it's all about physical contraction versus physical expansion. So from there, what we're being asked is what pressure may be twisting or distorting your expression. So if you go into a place and this happens and you've got the shields up and there's no authentic expression that's really trying to come out, then we end up with death. And death is one of those things where, in this kind of situation, it can actually lead to the death of the idea. It can lead to the end of the ability for whatever authentic expression you have to say to end. Death is a whole process of transitioning and transforming into something different. When you share an idea, and I've had this experience many times, when you share an idea with somebody who is open, who is willing, who is the person to share it with, then the idea actually starts to take on a life of its own. It no longer becomes the idea that we hold in our head, or it never the resource that we have thought of and created. It now becomes something more. That's the transition and transformation that death opens. And when we force something, when we push something, when we try to even alter ourselves in order to be able to get what we want out, then the original purpose, the original idea will actually die. And chances are, if you've experienced this, you'll notice that once you've done that and you try to reclaim that idea, say to share it with someone else, it's gone, right? It's basically been cremated kind of thing, right? Like when we distort and twist our unique selves and our what it is we want to share, we will actually destroy what it is that we want to share. And so this is really important. And I will also point out that the jumper aside, this is the middle card of our spread. This is kind of like an energetic pivot point where if we can really stay in alignment with ourselves, if we can genuinely be authentic, we're feeling the of the shoulders or the dropping of the shoulders, then we have the capacity to take these ideas and turn them into something much more than what they are, or we risk, kind of cutting them off at the root, and then there's nothing left to grow. There's nothing left to explore and expand upon. And then we're going to look at how can you navigate to the places where your expression is welcomed and needed. And I think that's the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that there's a lot of places where we can share and our expressions may seem welcomed, but what we need is we need to find the places where our expression is needed as well. Because just because somebody says, "Oh, yeah, I want to hear what you have to say," there's a chance that that's just nice words. And when you start to talk, they might tune out. And so looking and making sure that what it feels like to be in a place that really needs your energy, that really needs what you have to share is important. And here we have the Eight of Swords. And I find it interesting that on the one side of death, we have the Four of Coins, which, is that difference between I'm gathering resources that are really important that I can share and that can get everybody through versus hoarding. And then you have the Eight of Swords, which is fear. And fear can kind of be the same energy, only now we're dealing with thoughts as opposed to the resources of the Four of Coins. And now with this fear that can steal your breath away, right? So if you think about it, you walk into a room, you go like this, and the fear comes in, goes, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if this is the right place. It's going to lead to that, you know, death of the idea. Whereas sometimes, fear and anxiety is normal when you're sharing something, especially when you're allowing yourself to share from the heart. It can be very scary. And so being able to come in and say, knowing the difference between okay, I'm gonna just really be this way versus that kind of buckling in. It's really important for us to understand what the fear is also kind of guiding, because as you go through the transition of death, right? So as you go through the transition from the four through death to what comes next, there is a fear of unknown. And the fear of the unknown is the greatest fear that we can ever face, because there's nothing necessarily that we can do, because if you have no idea what's coming, there's no way of knowing what resources to have available, what choices and what paths. And so at this point, the best way to navigate to the places where your expression is welcome and needed is to feel into the type of fear that you're having. If the type of fear is that anxiety, the heart's racing, it's beating really fast, and you're like going, "Ooh, I'm kind of excited, but I'm afraid to share it." That is a fear of growth, right? Not that it's a fear of growth, it's a fear kind of from this growth that's going on. Whereas if your fear, if you're starting to get nauseous in your stomach and your lower extremities start to kind of root into place and you can't move forward and you're really stuck, that is the just a fear of sharing in the wrong place. And so again, it's very physical, it's very somatic in the way that we're going to experience these, because most of the time, the only way to overcome fear is to face it head on and to move beyond it. And so knowing what kind of fear it is. So if you walk into a place and you have that shoulders up and your breath is hard to come through and you're feeling nauseous and your head's starting to spin, that's a fear that says this is not the time. This is not the place. And if you can understand that and take a breath and step back, that's going to alleviate the fear. The other fear is saying what you need to do is you need to buck up and you need to take a step forward and get through the fear. So it's really important to be able to really read your body. And that's why taking value out of everything is important, because if you value yourself enough and you're not seeking external value, then you will take the time to either think about your experiences in the past or to be able to really start to tune into them going forward. So, our final position question is, what lesson can be learned from failed expression? And when I was creating this, I thought it was really important to put a question like this, because a lot of times you'll find that a spread will always end up with some kind of positive note. But in our lives, we are going to fail. And failure will always lead to something new. It will always lead to growth. It will always lead to some way of understanding. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult. It can be totally devastating when we fail at things. The thing is again, taking the value out of it. Because we fail, there is no reason to say, I have failed, therefore I am a failure, right? That's the big thing we need to keep in mind, is that failing at something means that there was something lacking either in a skill, in an understanding, in a resource, something that you can go and get, something that you can acquire. It is not saying that you yourself as a person is a failure. That needs to be very clear. And so when I built this into this spread, I thought it's very important for people to start to really appreciate and understand that failure is a gift. It is a possible step forward if we're willing to remove the self-judgment and the value statements that we put with when we have failures. So anyway, uh, coming back off my little soapbox, what lesson can be learned from failed expression? Here we have the Seven of Swords. And I think this is actually a really beautiful card to end this with, because the thing is the Seven of Swords is all about deception. And for me, I always look at it as self-deception. Where are you out of integrity? Where are you out of alignment? Where are you, deceiving yourself? Where are you twisting your authentic expressions? And if we follow through with everything that's been going on in the spread, this does make a perfect sense that what we can learn from the failed expressions is where we have deceived ourselves in believing that if I share this in any way possible, people will get it. People will understand. People will appreciate. But the thing is the failure shows that that is absolutely false. That the more you distort your message, the more you twist your authentic expression, the more you come out of integrity just to get something said, just to have somebody maybe pat you on the head and give you a gold star, the farther away that you are going to be from actually feeling, living, understanding what it's like to be seen, to be heard as your absolutely most unique, beautiful, precious self. And so this is all kind of making a lot of sense. And we'll finish, before I do a quick summary, we'll finish with our jumper. And the jumper, we have the Ten of Swords. And I think, again, this is just beautiful synergy because the thing is the Ten of Swords has the capacity for somebody to just give up and say, you know what, no matter what I do, nothing changes. This is the value, right? This is when we put our value on external expectations, on other people validating us. This is what this leads to, is this belief that no matter who I talk to, no matter what I do, no matter where I share, nobody gets me, I'm not important. And so then the negative self-talk, the judgment comes in. And what this is saying is that that's one side of it. If you are unwilling to connect with yourself and really, really be willing to be vulnerable and to be authentic and to really connect to your spirit, if you're willing to know the best way to utilize the resources that you're gathering, willing to go through the uncomfortableness of the transition from going from sharing with everybody, from just wanting to get it out to being more discerning of who you're going to share with, to understand and read the signs and the symbols of your fear to help you move towards the growth and expansion that you deserve. And by doing that, allowing yourself to identify where you're deceiving yourself and where you're misleading yourself and where the distortions are really leading you off course, then you start to see the other side of the Ten of Swords, which is that understanding that a long cycle of, we'll use failures, as this is what this question, the final question was about, right? So as we understand the cycles that we've been going through and all of the things that have been putting us off course, we start to see the light and we start to realize that we are the ones who have the capacity to bring an end to everything that feels off and really allowing ourselves to really start to share our authentic expressions with the people in the places, in the ways that we are really going to shine. And so I think that that's absolutely, very beautiful. A couple of things that I'll say before we end is, including the jumper, we ended up with three sword cards. Even without the jumper, we had 2 out of 5 cards that were swords. But as, 3 out of 6, half of the reading is based on our internal thought processes, right? We're looking at our fear, where we're misleading and guiding ourselves off track, and where anxiety is really keeping us looking at those limiting stories. And when you look at those, it makes a lot of sense, especially because it's coming after death. When we're looking at transforming, when we're looking at transitioning, these are the things that we need to transition and transform first, is how our brain is getting in the way, right? So if we're going to have a distortion, if we're going to have a twist in our authentic expression, it is always going to start with our inner dialogue. And so that's why we're being told to really pay attention. Because the other thing I'll say is we have a 2 and we have a 4. So these are all earlier in the cycle. So this is the building of the momentum towards sharing, towards creating, towards embodying, and really being in our authentic expression. And the only thing that's going to stop the transformation are all the stories that we're telling that are limiting. Because I will say there are definitely some positive cards in the sword suit, but these ones are all the challenge ones, right? The fear and the deception and the anxiety of being unable to move forward and know why we want to move forward. These are all the things that are really kind of keeping us in the cycles of, I need external validation. I need someone else to tell me that what I do is good, someone else to tell me what I do is valuable. And in fact, it's funny that this is the theme because I was just doing that this morning. I had shared something with someone and they gave me some feedback and I kind of went fishing for some more because like we all have this. We all have this as a wound that we're working on. And so it's just important to kind of be able to step back and remember and go, "Oh, okay. that's what this is. And every time you make that little shift, right? Like Death is saying, every time you make that little shift, every time you make that little bit of transformation, your transition into being more in align with your unique and authentic self is coming closer and it's becoming much more vibrant. And once you start to trust that, it can really snowball into this great momentum forward. So I hope you enjoyed this reading. I hope it gave you some kind of clarity on how you can really align with your authentic self and really learn how and where to share your ideas because the ideas you have, they're wonderful, they're brilliant. And the other big thing that I hope that you gain from this is the understanding that failure is nothing to fear, and it is also nothing to judge yourself upon. And so, with that, I wish you the greatest of days, and I will see you next week. In the meantime, take care, and I will see you around the webs.